we are live, and thank you so much for joining us. And this is my second live streaming show. So today is my grand opening day. I'm super excited. And this show is called What is School For? So on this show, we talk about education. And I have another show, which is social media digital marketing. But this show is something really close to my heart. As a college professor, I just resigned from my job, and now I'm building my own school. So education is something very close and dear to my heart. So on this show, I have already an amazing line of speakers who are parents, digital marketers, entrepreneurs, startup company founders in the education space, and school principals, educators, and of course, children. I want to give children a place to voice their perception and understanding of education. So here we talk about education, the problems in our educational system, and ways that we can change, we can make a difference, we can disrupt the system. And we also talk about the future of education, the future of work, and the future of our children, how we can make our children be future ready, holistic human beings, being curious and passionate about life, about their future, about learning, and so on and so forth. So this interview is really inspired by my interview with Seth Godin. So I'm really honored to have my dear friend Dan and as my guest of honor for this first episode. So the show is going to be on every Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific time, noon Eastern Standard Time, and 5 p.m. British time. And so if you are live with us right now, I saw that we already have some people. And let me know in the comment section where you are joining us from, social media wise and geographically speaking. And we are live on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on my personal page, public page, and also we are live on Twitter/Periscope. And then we actually connected in person at the Social Media Week in Lima, organized by our dear friend Jessica Phillips. And so Dan Dan was also a speaker at the event. So Dan we had an amazing conversation regarding education. And so he and his wife homeschooled not just one child or two children or three, but how many? You want to share?
Well, 8 or 9, depending on how we count. But
yes.
9.
So 9 children, and very incredible. I loved. So then when we were at the conference, and then we had a very insightful discussion. And at that time, I was like, wow, you have to come to my show as the first speaker to open this show, get started. And then besides being an amazing dad and parent, he is a digital marketer, a relationship marketing consultant, and a millennial keynote speaker, and a Twitter video king. I don't want to use champion, a king, and you have to really follow him on Twitter, on different social media channels. But today we're not going to discuss social media. We're going to discuss their journey to homeschool their 9 children, and each of their kids have become a remarkable human being. So I can't wait to get started and learn more about homeschooling, as this is something that I want to do with my own children. So anyway, welcome to the show, Dan, and thank you so much for being who you are, for being so awesome.
I am so pumped to be here. The opportunity to be the first one on. I love what you're doing here, and I can't wait to just kind of break this down a little bit.
Awesome. So do you want to add anything to my kind of brief introduction?
No, that was more than I could ever say about myself. It was fantastic. Yeah, I love video. I love that we can connect like this. And of course, education is something that when you and I spoke is something that's near and dear to both of us, and not just for children. You and I were talking a lot about how we take the same things that we want to do with our kids and we apply them in our own lives. So I love that as well, that education and learning happen beyond just the classroom, which I know Classroom Without a Walls is all about.
Yeah!
So I'm big about that. I love that idea that education and learning is part and parcel to everyday life, and I'm a huge advocate for that.
I'm just so excited. Like you guys, like this is something that I can talk about like forever. So I'm really excited. We have so many people joining us from LinkedIn, Brian and Joseph and Jeanette, and so thank you so much, everyone. And Catherine, oh wow, so many dear friends are here. Thank you so much for being with us, everyone. We are talking about homeschooling and education. So share with us, Dan, how did you get started on this journey? So you homeschooled all of your 9 children, right? Nobody actually went to school for a single day. Is that right?
Our oldest went to school. She went to a Montessori school for their first grade program. They've got a name for it. I can't remember what it is. It's not first grade, but she went to Montessori school for a year. And then after that, we went out to the West Coast in the US, and we didn't do schooling anymore. So they've never been to a public school, any of them. One of them had a year in a Montessori school, which is very different from a public school, but even still, it wasn't quite what we were looking for. So we shifted everybody to homeschooling, and then we've never looked back, really.
Wow, this is so amazing. So I want to ask you, really, you were talking about like none of the schools really met your expectation. I'm the same. You know, our children also go to a non-traditional school, which is amazing. But really, like no school makes me happy. And so I can't wait to homeschool my own children. So what are some of the reasons that inspired you and your wife to make such kind of radical, like very different decision to homeschool your children?
Yeah, so for me, I came out of the public school system as a high school dropout. So I actually didn't finish high school. I wasn't a huge fan of it. From kindergarten till grade 10, I was in, they used to have them in Canada, they're called enrichment programs. So they would be programs for kids that are further ahead. They're learning more complex stuff at an earlier age. I was a part of that. And it was great that they were shoving all this information at you, but I learned to really detest just the systems. And instead of teaching you how to find answers, they just give you answers. It really, at very young age, I figured out this feels a lot like being a parrot, where they speak, I speak back. They speak, I speak back. There's not a lot of creativity and innovation in that. So I didn't actually finish high school. I just dove headfirst into the real world and life, started interacting with people. Now, I didn't stop learning. I just left formalized education. So for me, looking at my time in high school and what I gained from it, I knew that I wanted something a little bit different for my kids. I wanted not only for them to be able to acquire knowledge, but I want them to understand what that process looks like. And I want them to be able to pursue knowledge that they were passionate about. So there's always the basics. We always have the basics in learning where everybody can agree foundationally you want English, you want math, you want them to be able to read, write, you want them to be able to do basic science. Like these are things that everybody agrees across the board. That's great. However, what about everything else that doesn't fit into those boxes? What about all of these other studies? What are all these other things that you could dive into at a much younger age that we simply don't, because they don't fit in a curriculum for that age?
Amen.
So that was the big thing for us of the world is a very big place. It is rapidly evolving. Whatever you know today could completely change tomorrow with one new discovery. And we wanted an education system that enabled our kids to go and find the answers and pursue their own passions in whatever field they choose to go after.
Oh, I love this. I love this. This is so important because, guys, my background is I worked in higher education in the United States for 10 plus years. And I actually grew up in China. So I experienced both two different types of education. And I have to say that like formal education really slowly, gently killed my interest in learning. And so now I can honestly say that I love learning. And, you know, and Dan and I, before we actually started the show, we're talking about this. My favorite quote from Mark Twain is, "Don't let schooling interfere with education." So that's kind of my takeaway from the things you just mentioned. So can you please share with us, what do you think are some problems in our, or missing links in our educational system? You kind of mentioned, so if you can summarize a few points with us, and from a parent, from a digital marketer, and from a dad, from your own perspective.
Yeah, so the first big one I think is the ability to give the kids responsibility at a much younger age. So for most people, when you start the school system, you're starting at 5, 6 years old. With us, my wife starts actually teaching them how to read and write at 2 and 3. So they start much sooner than they would if they were in formalized education, and that we simply start sooner so that they can start to read books, they can start to understand things, they can start to imagine and get creative at a younger age. For us, if learning is going to be a lifelong thing, then there shouldn't be a start and finish. It shouldn't be, well, you're 5 and now it's time to get started learning, and then you'll do that until you're 23 and you're out of college, and then you stop learning, and then you just do whatever you learned the rest of your life. And it's just not true. Nobody that I know professionally would vouch that, well, yeah, I learned from the time I was 5 until I had my undergraduate or my graduate or my doctorate, and then I stopped learning. It's not true. So for us, it's getting it all rolling at a much earlier age was crucial. The other one was learning is much bigger than you being saddled to a desk or in an office or a booth. There's so much learning that happens out in the real world. And so a big part of our learning was, well, we want our kids to be able to volunteer. So they would go read at retirement homes. They would go dance. They would sing. They would help volunteer. I think my daughter's out helping a lady in the community paint her patio at the moment. And I mean, these are things that you wouldn't have in a curriculum, but they're all skills that they're going to learn. And even more so, those interactions with people outside of the classroom, there's so much learning potential in those as well. So that was another big one for us. I didn't want to put my kids in a bus off to a school, chain them to their desk, then they come home on a bus, and then what? There's no passion, there's no drive, you get a field trip once a quarter, right? That's not enough for me. The world's a much bigger place than that, and I think the sooner that the kids are out into the world, the better off they're going to be with it.
Every single point. I love how you talk about field trip. Everyone in the live audience, let's go back to our memory. We all have had like trips to different places. So on the day when we had a field trip, at least for me, I was so excited. I got up early. So, but like if you think about it, every single day should be a school trip day, right? So students, they should be love learning. I also love how you mentioned, if this thing is not part of the curriculum and students may not be interested in learning, they may not have a chance to learn. When I look at my own students, the question I hear a lot is, Dr. I, will this be on the exam?
Oh, yeah.
So if the answer is yes, actually interesting. Today, I just read Seth Godin's blog article. He was talking about this, how much value we give to that piece of paper, which is a diploma. And it is not even education. Education should be journey driven, not just be driven by a piece of paper. But that's the question my student asked me a lot. And even like volunteering at local communities. And so unless there is an external, incentive, right? A point, fulfilling certain curriculum requirement, and students are more interested in doing that. But like that shouldn't be the case for learning. And so I really love how you mentioned that. I bet your daughter really enjoy, I'm helping this person. And I think the gratification comes from the inside as opposed to, oh, look, I checked this box.
Well, and she'll also have a life skill, right? So those are things that I think are underappreciated in a massive way, where I've been to businesses, I've been to places where you see people in their 20s and 30s, they don't know how to cook a meal, or they don't know how to use a broom. Like these are simple things that we should all be able to do. So now my daughter will come home today knowing how to paint a deck. And for me, I think that's fantastic. Somewhere later in life, who knows? She'll probably have a deck of her own, and she will have to paint a deck that's all her own.
Totally, yeah.
So
those life skills, and also, I think we also talk about, financial literacy. Like no children, they actually learn how to become financially literate, but they have to spend their rest of life to figure out how to make money, how to save money, how to invest, reinvest, all those things. Like nobody ever taught them, formal educational environment. So I love how you brought up life skills, so important. So share with us. Do you want to add something?
Well, I just want to give a shout out to Winnie's son, because I know that she and I have had long conversations. Financial literacy for younger age children, where it doesn't need to start once they're in college and have already taken on a credit card. We can start financial literacy at a much younger age, where if they're learning about what good finances look at 5 and 6 and 7 years old, then we can do amazing things. And I think she's got a course on LinkedIn for that purpose, where families can come together and actually break down finances, which I think is phenomenal. I think that's a great thing.
Oh, yeah. Totally. Yeah. I love when you see myself. Yeah. It is so important, like starting at a young age. So share with us, what do you think are like some of the challenges of homeschooling, especially you have quite a few children. So what are some challenges? Share with us.
So the big challenge is, well, there's a challenge from the outside that's massive, and that's a lot of people have different stigmas, thoughts, opinions about homeschooling. And what a lot of people see it as is, well, that's just you letting your kids kind of do whatever at home. It doesn't have a structure. It doesn't have a system. There's no play to it. And that's not necessarily true. So there are a lot of different kinds of homeschooling. There's unschooling, there's free schooling, there's homeschooling. You can look up those topics yourself. I'm not going to dive too deep into them. But I found for us, we haven't had a single system all the way throughout. My eldest daughter's probably had 4 or 5 different ways that we've done homeschooling from start to finish.
Wow.
From paper books to online exclusively, to online with mentorship, to apprenticeship. There's been all kinds of different systems that we use. And for us, that's the beauty of homeschooling. So that's one of the big things, is that flexibility, where we find that we could add to the curriculum, that we could bring greater value to the curriculum, then we have the flexibility to do that. Nothing is set in stone. And even from child to child, it's going to differ greatly. But that's one of the big things, is it's not hands off, guys. You can't just send your kids to homeschool for the day. You have to be conscious of what they're learning, what tools they're using, and constantly looking and evaluating it, going, is this tool doing what we want it to do? If not, great. Or if not, no good. Let's find another tool that could possibly do that better for us, right? And then the other big one that people have a lot of problems with is, well, they're not getting the social and communication skills that they need. And that's a big thing, where people are like, well, if they're at home all the time, then it's not going to work out. And the reality is, it's just not true. That's a huge misunderstanding with homeschooling. As we touched on briefly before, my kids are actually out in the community engaging with people more than the children that are in school for 6 hours a day.
I love this.
You look at the kids that are in a desk for 6 hours a day, they come home and what do they want to do? They want to go on the computer, they want to go on the TV, they want to go wherever, right? So for us, our kids, they do their homeschooling, but they're out and about. They go to homeschool groups, people meet up, they do things, they volunteer in the community. And then when they come home at night, they've got their clubs, just like regular kids would have. So they go to, my eldest daughter's in cadets, my second eldest is in 4-H. I've got 2 dancers, I've got a bagpipe player, so all of our kids are actively involved in the community and socially. So it's a key and integral part of homeschooling. You're not putting your kids in a box. What I've actually found with homeschool groups from one side of North America to the other is, when you take homeschool kids and put them into a community of their peers, so like age kids, they will be able to engage. And that's great. Kids in a school can do that as well. But the big difference comes if I take a homeschool child and I put them in a room of adults. That homeschool child is perfectly comfortable interacting, having conversations, and being a part of what's happening. Whereas the child that's in a public school system kind of just sits there. They don't feel like they can engage, interact, or maybe they just don't know how because they're unfamiliar with the situation. So it's amazing to see that when people bring up that qualm of, well, what about their social interaction? My response is, those who are in homeschooling, I actually find to be more socially capable than less.
Oh, I love this so much. Especially, I love how you mentioned, I'm a big advocate of mixed age learning group, because if you think about it, in our professional working environment, none of us only works with people at the same age. We work with people who are different, older, younger, at the same age as us, and from different countries. So I observed the same thing. I remember last year I finished listening to this book, and the dad is an immigrant from India, and he is like $1 billion, like a super successful entrepreneur. And he shared his children are remarkable. And he talked about mixed age education and also learning outside the classroom. And he shared that every time when he goes to a professional conference or when they have local events, he actually brought his own children, so his children can interact with people of different ages. So that is, I so agree. I love that point you mentioned. Yeah.
The other benefit with the ages is with homeschooling. If you were to go to a public school, it would say, well, they have to learn how to read and write by this age. And then the next grade, they have to learn this skill. And then the next age, they have to learn this skill. And what we found with education is it's not that rigid. Our son, for example, has a passion to learn to read at a much younger age than most of my daughters did. So he wants to read at a younger age. Great, let's teach him to read at a younger age. But for our daughters that want to learn to read a little bit later, or they want to read bigger books at an older age, we were okay with that. It's not that they're never going to learn it, but if that's not where their passion is right now, let's have them focus on something else. So some of them love to just sit down and do math for hours. And it's like, okay, great, go do that. Like, you're going to catch up on your reading. There was a study that we read that said you could actually learn everything from kindergarten to grade 12, which is, I mean, all of your not your post-secondary, everything before post-secondary. If you waited until you were 17 or 18, right? We'll say an adult. If you were ready at 17 and 18 to start school, you could learn everything K to 12 in 18 months.
Oh, I agree.
Like, so what we've really done is create a system where, well, let's just put them in a building for 12 years and have them learn something that they could learn in 18 months. And it's like, well, okay, I understand all of the other reasons why we do that, why we need the kids to be in school, because kids can't just be running all over the world and people have to work. I understand that. But at the same time, if they can truly grasp all of that knowledge in such a short window, then that means that during this time when they're younger, we should really just be encouraging them to learn the things that they're passionate about learning, knowing that whatever they maybe lag a little bit behind in by a year or two, they can pick up much quicker as they grow in their learning.
Oh, so true, so true. You mentioned so many great points. I love, like, you mentioned, like, if your children or child is really like interested in doing something like painting, you don't actually disturb the kid. But when you think about a formal school environment, every single class is so structured, maybe overly structured. Every minute is being very structured. So the class period is like 45 minutes or an hour. So after that, even if you just get into the momentum of doing the painting or reading the book, everybody stop. We have to go to another thing. And the interruption is so abrupt, and you'll hear a bell, and I think, we always, oftentimes we say that, oh, our children's attention span is so short, blah blah blah, they can't really focus. But I think to some extent that as parents, as educators, we interrupt our children all the time. We don't really allow them to practice their skills to focus, and do focused work. That's why I love, you mentioned Montessori. They seem to practice that.
Yeah, they have to do one thing at a time with Montessori, but yes, they're allowed to go get the lesson of their choice. And I mean, I hear a lot of people say, well, kids today just don't have an attention span. And then I look at a platform like Twitch, where the younger generation will go online and watch video games for 8 hours straight. And what I see there is a disconnect where it's not necessarily that they don't have the attention span. They don't have attention span for that topic. If you were to chain me to a desk and say, for the next hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, you're going to have to learn something that you are completely disinterested in. You have no interest whatsoever in this, but you must sit here and pay attention for the next 2 to 3 hours. Okay. Like, I don't see, I personally couldn't do that.
I couldn't do it myself. Think about
you and I were talking about this before, where it always has to come back to real world, right? And the reality are there times in the real world where you're going to have to pay attention and you may not particularly be completely excited about it? Yes. But that's a point of maturity. When people are younger, and I think to a large extent, that's not necessarily true in the real world, because each of us goes into a job or into a industry that we're excited to work in, that we want to work in. And so we don't find ourselves overly distracted. I know you're in education. Personally, for me, I love marketing. Like, when I show up at work, I'm excited to dive into the day because I'm doing the thing that I love to do.
Exactly. But not everybody is doing what they love. A few days ago, I had this, because now, I resigned from my job. I'm building my own school. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm exactly doing what I love. So the other day, I had a conversation with another parent. I told him, I was like, wow, I love Monday. He looked at me like, what? What did you say? You love Monday? He couldn't believe it. As if I were from another, like from the Mars or something. But I think the point you mentioned earlier is so valid. Doing what you love. And so many of our children, I think education should be an inside out approach, should be purpose driven. And that purpose has to come from our children's heart. But like so few children actually have their hearts being poked. They are in the classroom. They don't really understand why are they learning certain things. What is the relevance? How learning this is going to improve their personal life. They don't really see that. And so I think that's a big missing link.
Mario Christener has an excellent point on LinkedIn. That idea of time management, they've got to learn it on their own. I think that's so crucial. Not one of my children actually has the same schedule as the other child. They all operate on different schedules. And my two eldest children, they actually set their own schedule. We don't. So we have a 14-year-old who's ready to graduate from high school. We've got a 12-year-old who is got 2 full-time internships on farms because she wants to get into agriculture. She wants to get into the farming industry, but they set their own schedules. So they know I'm going to be at the farm for this many hours, and then I've got to do my schooling. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. And they know what the expectations and requirement are from us. So here are the tasks that you have to accomplish, but how and when you choose to accomplish those is up to you. So my 14-year-old is up at 5:30 in the morning because she knows that's when she has to be up to get everything done in the day that she wants to do. I have to do my formal education. I have to do my art because that's what she's passionate about. I've got a job to work. I've got to help in the home. Like all of those things have to be processed. They have to be done, but that's up to her. We don't do that for her. I think it's too much spoon feeding nonsense. Here, let us do it for you. And then when you finally send them off to college or send them out into the real world, no wonder they're lost because there's no template. Nobody is telling them you have to go here, 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 here. Everybody goes, well, here is what the expectation is. Get the job done. And I hear this all the time, especially working as an entrepreneur, where a lot of people will ask when I'm doing consultancies, well, how many hours is that? And right away, it's no, you misunderstand. This isn't an hourly thing. This is, objective do you want to achieve? Great. That's what we're talking about. We have to break away from this mold of, well, this is this many hours. Is that really a value to anybody? Or is it more about, this is what I'm going to deliver? And I think that's where the world is heading in a big way, where we're getting out of the 9 to 5, let's sit at a desk, let's do the commute. And more we're seeing people sit down and go, well, no, what if people didn't have to waste 3-4 hours a day in a car driving somewhere, right? And same for the kids. 2 hours on a bus a day. What if they didn't have to waste time studying things that honestly probably aren't going to be super practical? I know that at some point I learned about the Canadian agriculture system from wherever, but I've never used that ever in my life. Never. So, I mean, it's an interesting thing. It's an interesting beast, but I think that flexibility is also a lot of responsibility. And the sooner that you give them that responsibility, decisions that come after pre-secondary, they become a lot simpler. So if you were to ask my eldest daughter, do you want to go to post-secondary? She'll say, no, I want to be an artist. So I am actually looking to apprentice under people that are currently working in the trade. And she knows that's a conscious decision that she's made. And we support her in that. I think that leaves a lot of room for a lot of different things. We've got another daughter who's very school driven. She wants to go post-secondary. She loves math. She loves sciences. She wants to go to a university. Great. But I know that girl is not going to go in with a non-declared major, waste a year of tuition, feel lost, feel frustrated, and abandon post-secondary. She's going to go in all guns blazing. I want to be this. I want to do this. This is where I want to go. And off she goes. So we've got a bunch of different things where our second eldest wants to work on a farm to learn how to farm so that she can run a farm. That makes sense to us. So we support her in that. Our eldest wants to be an artist. She wants to apprentice under artists. Great. We support that. We have a child that wants to be engineer, mathematics, something of that trait, something that's more academic. Great. Go to a post-secondary school and we will support you in that. That's what I love about learning. It's not one or the other. It's all these different venues and avenues and systems and methods of doing it. And the more that parents can come behind people and go, well, is it really necessary to have a post-secondary? I would argue maybe not.
Yeah, oh my God, so many. I'm just literally, I'm really holding my emotions to not interrupt you too much. And I'm literally in love with this conversation. And I think, like you have 9 children, and I just like from among those 9 children, you can see every kid is different, right? So when I listened to one of the TED Talks, and was given by this professor. He's in education at Harvard University, and he used to be a school dropout, and I think his GPA was like 0.9 or something, really really low. And he made a very good point. And there's no average kid, but when you look at our school system, the entire system, the curriculum, everything is designed for the average kid, even though we don't really have an average kid. Like in your own case, you have 9 kids, and they're all different. They're so different based on what I'm hearing right now. And can you imagine, those are children from the same parents, right?
Yeah.
And how different each of them is from the other. Can you imagine in a classroom, children from different racial, culture, background, and they are here. I pretend everybody is learning the same schedule, the same curriculum, and we are forcing our children to be passionate about this. And it does not make sense at all. So yes, and also I love, what do you want to say?
I just saw a question about assessment, because people heard us talking about grades and assessment and how we do that with homeschooling. And with assessment for us, they're foundational skills, let's say. Okay, so the math, English, whatever. We use tools like Khan Academy, education.com. We use tools like that do provide grades with what they do. And they show us that, yes, they have a standard level of understanding. Our 14-year-old is not doing typical high school that you would do here in Canada. What she does is she wakes up in the morning and she writes a GED test, which is it's the equivalent to a high school. You can just write one test and get a high school diploma essentially at the end of it. But that test has everything you would need to know in high school. So all she does for her school is she writes these tests over and over and over and over. And whatever she gets wrong, she has to go and find the answer to online, and then she goes and writes the test again. And she rinses and repeats that until she can pass the test. That's it. So that's her formalized education. As far as anything outside their formalized education, it's all results. So if my daughter goes and spends 4 hours at the farm, I want to know that she's actually doing something there. So the other day, she helped to take care of a newly birthed calf. There was no adult there at the farm. Nobody knew what to do. This calf had been born. That happens all the time. And here's this 12-year-old girl who just stepped up and went, I know what to do. Put a blanket on the calf, take care of the calf, go get somebody to help me lift it and move it. She did the whole thing. She took charge and was able to do it. Now, for us, that's okay. Is she actually learning how to do something? Yes, the results are there. My other daughter was an artist. I look at her art and is it progressing and moving forward? Do I see new skills? Do I see improvement? Yes, great. That's sufficient for me. As long as I see that meter moving forward, I know that whatever they're doing is going to be overall pretty darn good. So that's really what I look for as far as assessment. My wife does the same. Is we're constantly looking at, can you do it? So reading, am I going to make them take a reading test or a literacy test? No, but I'm going to ask them to read a book. And I want to see that they're engaging and they understand it and they've got that. So like I read Narnia with one of my daughters who has a hard time reading at the moment. She gets her words jumbled and the letters jumbled. And I used to have a similar problem. But we sit down and read Narnia together. And I'll read a couple pages and she'll read some of it. And it's amazing to see that as you do that more and more, the results are just there. I'm not a tester on that, though. The second you test her, that passion will go away.
Oh, so true, so true. I think from a neuroscience perspective, like nobody performs well under stress. I'm a teacher. When I started my teaching journey, I had to climb this tenure track system, and every year, every semester, I got evaluated. And every time when I had a person come in who is a lot more senior than me evaluating me, I felt like I performed a lot worse than if this person was not there, because under pressure, I don't think we perform so well under pressure. Just like physiologically, something in my body changed that I was not fully myself. And imagine our children, they have to do that every single semester. under so much stress.
And that's it. So for a large part, the foundational skills, yes, we look at the grades that are there, but that's not nearly as important to us as two things. One, can they apply the knowledge that they're learning? And that's a big one that I think is lacking in the public system, where is there an application part of this? Are they using it effectively? And the other one is, if they're using it effectively, that's great, but do they know how to find that answer on their own is the other one. So we don't like to hand them a textbook and say, well, here are all the answers, which is how the school system's built. This book has all the answers in it that you will need. Okay, but what if there's an answer that's not in there that they need? Do they know where to find that? Do they know how to find that? One of the mantras that my kids hear us say often is, the only thing that's unacceptable in your education right now, the only thing I never want to hear is, I don't know. You can't say I don't know. There may have been a time where that would have been acceptable. I would argue that there isn't, but especially in this day and age where literally, okay, Google, tell me anything I want to know. And you have thousands of answers. And yes, they have to learn how to process those and vet those and find out what's true. But the reality is you can learn anything at any time from leaders all over the world. There's no reason why your kids need to just be parroting information, when instead, if they knew where to find information, where to find answers, and how to practically apply that, they're going to be much better off.
Wow. I love this. I think I worked with students mainly from higher education, formal school environment. And the question I hear, like the comment I hear a lot from my students, besides, is this going to be on the exam? That's one thing I hear a lot. They want to learn only on the condition that thing is going to be on an exam. The second thing I hear a lot from my students, I don't know. Like, I was like, can you figure it out? I don't know. Like, I think over the course of education, they are so used to being told what to do, right? Or what not to do. They got so scared of like, okay, did I do something wrong? Listen to the teacher, being obedient. And that was their default mentality. So over a period of time, after repeating that identity for so long, they are not willing to figure things out on their own. But I love how you mentioned, your own children, they are so willing, many things I don't know, but if my student, they can just Google, they will find so many resources. But I love how you mentioned that your own children, their ability to engage in self-directed learning is so important. And if you think about it, today's information is going to be tomorrow's misinformation. So what we need our children to master is their ability to deconstruct and reconstruct and engage in self-directed learning. So I just love this. You have to write a book on this, Dan.
Once they're all through. Once they're all done. Once they're out in the world and we've got results from all of them and can show this is where they've gone. I think that's the really important part for me, is I want to show that it's not, and I won't write it, my wife will write it, but I just want to show that it's not just the process of, well, did they homeschool? And I think that's one of the big problems with education is we're constantly talking about, well, their school years, their time at school, their school. No. You have to understand that life is much bigger than that. And exactly. I don't want kids that are good at school. I want kids that are good at life. And school is supposed to equip them for that, right?
Amen.
Dan, I would love to hear some practical logistics around educating that many kids at home. Okay, so everybody's got an environment that they like to operate in, okay? And you can see that very quickly. There are people that like an office, like I've got. If you see a video with me on social media ever, I am in this room. This is my fortress of solitude. This is where I go to get the job done. My wife performs better out in the world, out with 1,000 people, and that's just who she is, okay? So for us, we've got a couple of different places where people can learn in our home. So we've set up a mini school that people can essentially be in. It's got computers and desks, and it's a public space. They can put music on, and the coffee machine's there for my older daughter, and it's all there. It's comfortable. It's a school or an office environment. But we have our backyard. So if our kids, our younger kids are done their school for the day, they just want to go in the backyard, they can do that. We've got a room that's got couches that's more laid back. There's no one place that they go to learn. As far as learning outside of the home, we really allow them to engage with volunteer experiences. My wife and I are very big about presenting opportunities, and then it's up to them whether or not they want to take it. So my two eldest right now are off today to a retreat in Pennsylvania to be with some other young people from our church denomination. And they're going to be there for the weekend. So that's a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old gone for the weekend to another country. And we're okay with that. That's an experience we want them to have.
Mhm.
We allow them to choose who they're going to volunteer with, local fairs, events. They can go do that. Going to the library, there's an option too. We really try to make it as open as possible because each of us have those moods, right? There are times where we just want to unplug, get out of the office, have a coffee, read a book or a conversation. Great. We enable our kids to do that. We also give them the opportunity to be social when social is needed. We also give them the opportunity to be alone or secluded when they want to be secluded. And that flexibility, it's amazing to see them actually take that and use it. So not one of them stays put for 6 hours. And when they hear their friends say they go to school and they sit in a desk and they sit, that was not one of my kids. It doesn't matter how much they love school or not. Not one of them could do it. Not one.
I can't do it myself. I love learning. Yes.
So,
oh my
to
God.
answer your question, that's it. It's literally about creating a couple of different environments. It doesn't take a lot of time or space. I think it took us 3 couches, a backyard, 2 desks, and 4 computers.
Amen. I love this. I also love how you mentioned, I don't know if you ever watch this TED Talk. So this guy, he's a really expert talking about innovation and creativity. I want to ask our live audience, think about it. When was the last time that you were actually being very creative? You actually gained a creative idea. Where was that location? And think about it. Let me know in the comment section. And for me, my answer is like taking a walk, being outside, doing whatever, maybe even cleaning, showering, and from that TED Talk. So the speaker mentioned nobody ever mentioned at work. And it was so fascinating to think, yes, I was like really always very stressed being at work. And you can just replace work with school. So when was the last time that our children actually gained some really brilliant ideas or actually connecting the dots? I think oftentimes when I think about my own children, it's actually outside the classroom. And when all of their senses are being activated and engaged. So I love this. Yeah.
And I think that for me, I could honestly answer, I get most of my ideas at work, but that's because I'm constantly in conversation with people all day. And that's where my ideas come from.
The example he asked, they actually interview thousands of people, mainly people who go to 9 to 5, not people like us. Like for me, my work and who I am has beautifully intertwined. There's no separation. I'm sure you are the same. I'm thinking about my work. To me, it's fun. I'm playing. It's not like a play. I can't really separate. It's like when you're watching a movie, you love this, you don't really want to stop talking about it. So I'm sure you are the same. I think for many entrepreneurs watching this right now, you can probably relate if you are truly doing what you love. What you love is part of your identity. It's like my children. Even when I go to a conference, I'm not being a parent. They are still part of my thinking. I'm thinking about them. Exactly. Yeah. So I know you have your own Twitter chat that you need to get started. So
No. I canceled the Twitter chat. I canceled the Twitter chat today so that we have the time to break this down and do it justice. So.
Oh my God, you're so amazing. Yeah. So then I will mention that point. And you talked about Khan Academy. So I actually, when I followed them for quite a few years, when I went to the Boston conference inbound, and I actually had the great honor to hear him giving a keynote. And he shared, those of you guys in the live audience, if you have never ever heard of Khan Academy, KHAN, definitely Google them, especially if your children are struggling with math. So when he was giving the keynote and he mentioned there were so many children who failed, who struggled so much with learning math at their school, they all thrived by taking online classes, watching their online YouTube videos from the Khan Academy. You're also talking about how our children's attention span is short. I think even as an entrepreneur, as a content creator, I think our attention span is short for crappy content, for things that we are not interested in. But for things that we're passionate about, our favorite TV show, Netflix, whatever that we watch, we can't stop watching, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think our children the same. Learning should be the same. We just haven't figured out a way that really click with our children, the subjects that they're really passionate about, and deliver the content in a way that resonates with our own children. So I just want to add that.
The two biggest learning platforms that we use, number two would be Khan Academy. Number one would be YouTube. Hands down, bar none. If they want to understand how something applies, how something works, if they're doing a biology, if they're doing a science, if they're doing math, if they're having a hard time understanding something, there are so many resources available on YouTube. And we're talking accredited resources. We're talking people that have been math professors for years that got tired of classrooms and started recording YouTube videos to make math fun or science fun. And it's as simple as a search in YouTube, and those resources are there for them, and they can use them. And I love that. I think that that's really what I want my kids to have, is not a single teacher, but multiple teachers. And we've all heard that, right? It takes a community to raise a child. Well, it takes a community to teach a child as well.
Oh, I love this. That's why for my own program, you guys, some of you follow my journey, that I'm actually building my own school. And I want to make sure there's definitely the online learning component, also the in-person enrichment. We also have practitioners getting involved. And I think, it takes a village. That is so true. And parents, some of you are parents watching this right now. I don't think it's right to outsource our children's education to a school. There's no school that is personalized enough to meet the unique needs of our own children. And we have to do the homework to really observe our own children and understand. Yeah. So you were talking about technology, Dan. I want to ask you, what's your policy in regard to technology? Like, at what age do you give them a smartphone, if ever? And do you limit how much time you talk about YouTube? So share with us, what is your policy in terms of technology?
So in our home, we raise our children to be treated as adults, to make adult decisions at the age of 13, which is very different from a lot of people out there. When I say that, understand that I'm not saying 13-year-olds should be treated like adults. That's not what I said. We raise our children to be ready to make those conscious decisions and those first adult mistakes at 13. So we never buy a smartphone for our children. That's a standard rule. You are allowed to buy a smartphone when you can afford to buy a smartphone. Our kids don't have things bought for them. They've got to get a job and earn it and pay for it themselves. So none of our kids from 14 all the way down currently have a smartphone. None of them.
Wow.
If they need a phone, my wife and I have one. They can borrow my wife's for the day. If they're going somewhere and they've got to have a phone to be able to call, but they don't own a smartphone. As far as devices, we've got tablets, we've got computers, we've got a PlayStation, we've got TV. Those are all in public spaces. We make a point of having all of the technology. Even my office door is closed when I'm doing video calls or when I'm on with clients, but otherwise my door is open. And we really have a public space policy. That way everybody can see what you're doing. And that can also be a fun thing where everybody can see what you're doing. But at the same time, there's some accountability that you're on task and doing something that's productive instead of getting lost in whatever. We abide by the rules in terms of services for social media. So our eldest has Facebook and Instagram, but that she didn't have that until she turned 13. All of our other kids don't have that other than Facebook Messenger for Kids, which is specifically for a kids platform that we monitor. So as far as technology goes, we equip them with the tools, but our children have a very clear understanding that technology is a tool, not a toy. And that's been crucial. That it really is crucial. And I explain that to them, that you have to be conscious of how you're using tools and why. And there's a huge difference when you show them people that are out and about. When we go to church, when we go to a public gathering, my phone and my wife's phone are never out because we're engaging with the people. We're having conversations. This is what we're doing, and we're conscious and in that space. And we recognize, yes, I've got a phone. Yes, I know that there's emails on there and social feeds and people are tagging me in things, and that's great, but that's not where I am right now. And I find that when you teach them that from a very young age, that technology is a tool, not a toy, they don't come at it with that same mentality of, well, what else can I get lost on or dragged into other things with on technology? The public space also makes it so there's less concern with me letting my kids just go on a computer, because I know I could walk into the kitchen, or my wife could walk into the kitchen at any point and see what they're doing on those pieces of tech. I see all the great questions in chat. I am going to try to tackle them before we
had so many people join us for my very first show. I didn't even promote much, but thank you guys. I'm just loving. Okay, as you can see, I'm having such a great time. This is my soul food. So thank you, Mario, like Saba, everyone. Oh my God, thank you so much for being here, everyone. Yeah, this is great. So like, I want to ask you, why 13? Is that kind of a scientific like observation that you read from a book, or just based on your personal experience raising your own children?
I would say, well, we see it culturally for a long time. So we're Christian, but we also look at, cultures from around the world. And typically you see at 13, that's where they really try to discover who they are for themselves. And that's where a lot of parents would claim that there's a lot of tension. Oh, they've got their own opinions and ideas. They want to do their own thing. And for us, it was an acknowledgement of that and an understanding of, well, yeah, that's a good thing, isn't it? Mm-hmm. We're not raising children forever. Nobody wants somebody in their basement at 40, right? Like that's not the plan. We want adults. So for us, for them to have the opportunity, but also the responsibility of being an adult at a younger age, instead of waiting until they're 18 or 19 or 20, they start to make those initial mistakes that you make as an adult at a much younger age. And we're able to be there and guide them through some of those mistakes. So things like dating. Well, we talk to our daughter about it. What's the point of that? What are you looking for in that? Is it just because boys are shiny and attractive, or is it because they actually are going to bring some value to what you're doing? And we have these conversations with her as an adult, and it's amazing to see the choices that she makes. She more often than not will make a good decision that I probably wouldn't have made at the same age. And that's because she recognizes, in as much as I have the freedom to make choices, I am also responsible for the decisions that I make. I can't blame mom or dad for the poor decision I made. That's on me. The repercussions of that decision are my own.
Mm-hmm. Wow, so good. And I want to ask you, how are your own children different or similar compared to other children who go to a traditional public school, for example? Do your children ever feel like, oh, mommy and daddy, look at us, we're so different? Or any like how do you talk to them about that? Like the choices that you guys made on their behalf. So share with us. And also some differences between your own children and those kids who go to a traditional school that you observed.
Yeah. So one of them is their ability to take instruction from adults. Just the level of respect I find is different. So with my children, when an adult speaks, and I'm talking children, so not my eldest, but everybody that's still a child, when an adult speaks, they stop, they listen. If there was an instruction there, they say yes, and they go and follow the instruction. I find with those that are in public school, that's not necessarily the case. If it's not mom and dad talking to me, I don't care. So there's just a general level of respect that I find is very different. And that's not just my own children. I find that very common with homeschoolers. There's a greater level of respect for people in positions of authority. The other big difference would be socially, what people like to consume from public schools. I find it's all very much the same. Right? So if I had 12 kids from the same public school all come in and I ask all the boys, well, what do you guys like? They'll all like the same thing, right? And all the girls will like the same thing. But I find with all of my kids, each of them has such vastly different likes and dislikes as far as music and film and books and writing and art. And they each are so unique because there is no, it's not mob mentality, but there's no group culture that is pushing a certain standard of, well, we all like this singer because they're really in fashion right now. My kids don't grasp that. For them, they go, well, I don't really like their music, so I'm not going to listen to it. Even though they may be popular, that's not what's important to me.
Yeah, I love this. And I grew up in a traditional public school environment in China. And I think one observation I did reflecting on my own journey is how I was so afraid of being me. I want to be popular. Whatever is popular, whatever is trendy, I want to be like that, right? I think that's why we have this term, the popular kid. And there's actually not much diversity in terms of how we define popularity in a school environment. So everyone is kind of changing and bending their individuality to meet that arbitrary standard of popularity. And what I'm hearing from you is that your own children really, honor, they feel proud of their individuality, who they are. I think that's what we need. I love Brent Fencer always talks about be you, be yourself. And it is so interesting. Like our children, they were who they were, but school and society changed them. And then after that, they have to relearn to be who they are. But you guys are just kind of, embracing who you are on this entire journey, which I love.
Alice, I love this question. Alice Martinez, thank you for being here. And the question, how does homeschooling work for parents who work outside the home? Do you foresee a major shift in the way adults and schedules and workplaces look? So we made a conscious decision. My wife is actively involved in the community. She's technically an executive assistant for me. So she kind of keeps my schedule and calendar in line. And then with that, she also does all the homeschooling. I think that with remote work becoming a more and more prevalent thing in industry where people are not all working from an office, I think homeschooling is going to be something that people look at a lot more. I can't speak for everybody's individual circumstances, but to a large extent, I find that when parents stop and they consider, would it be possible for us to work on a single income, more people would be able to do it than you would think. I think there's a larger group of people out there that could do it, but it depends on what my wife and I don't drive a Corvette. We don't have, we're not constantly taking trips. There are sacrifices we've had to make in order to do this, to have a single income family. But those sacrifices, as far as what we see in preparing our kids for the future, were worth it. And I'm not advocating that that's right for every person out there. I fully acknowledge the single moms and single dads out there that are busting their butts and don't have a choice. And I am there with you. I love who you are. I love how hard you work. And that's phenomenal. All I would add is just because school says they have to learn a certain way doesn't mean that you can't enrich their education when they come home.
It's so true. Like we have so many parents joining us right now. Like I mentioned this earlier, and now we have a lot more people. Don't ever outsource your children's education to a school. There's no school that is personalized enough to really meet the unique needs, personality of your own children. And I worked in education. I don't even know my entire life. I'm 40 years old, and I frequently think one problem is our children, they are not passionate about learning. They're not, and their learning has become so outcome driven. And I think as parents, we want to just think about the future of our workforce. We want people who are really enjoying this, passionate about this. So yeah, I love that point you added. And you also work at home. I wonder, so do you actually adjust your work schedule based on the needs of your own children? How do you make that work?
I work from 4:30 in the morning until 6 at night. So I'm pretty much at work all day, but if there are things that my kids need, just like all of my clients, they know that I'm online. So if my daughters or my kids have a question, they'll knock politely at the door and they'll come and ask me. Or my eldest will send me a message on Facebook and say, Dad, I don't know what I'm doing here. Or Dad, can I do this? Can I figure out this? Do you know any resources that I can go to for this? My eldest keeps coming in and taking books off my shelf now. I want a business book to read, or I want a self-help book to read, or I want, she just took Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week because she wants to figure out
I love that. Oh my God.
She wants to do her time management better. And I right away, I was like, well, Tim Ferriss was a huge resource and asset for me. So and really that's it I make myself available. Dan Addison, I see that question of what are some of the complications or the hardships of being a homeschooler, and do my kids ever ask to go to school? No, my kids never want to go to school. In fact, there are times where my wife has just been at that like life moment, and the shadow threat is, if you don't stop, you're going to public school, and that's it. And they're like, oh, no, we'll be good. Oh my God,
I love that part.
But the reality is they love it because they see the flexibility of it. They see the ability to learn in different ways, and they can learn what they want when they want. And that's kind of special. Yes, it's foreign to them, so maybe they don't fully understand what that is, but I couldn't really, if they asked me, well, what are the benefits of going to public school over homeschool? I can't really think of a benefit from their side. The benefit for me would be that there wasn't 9 kids in the house and I would have a quieter workspace. But that I that wouldn't be a benefit really for me, because I'd miss my kids, I think, at the end of the day.
Totally. I for my other live streaming show, which is on Wednesday, we talk about social media digital marketing. I just had the CEO of Ningbo, John Ferrara, to come to my show, and he's very successful. Sold his first business at 125 million, but he took a 10-year sabbatical, just being at home, being with his own children, and he said the lessons he learned from those 10 years being with his own children at their critical moments were the best, a lot more impactful than the lessons that he learned from running his business. And I was like, wow. And how many of us, really regret missing some of the really special moments in our children's life. So I love how you added that point. Yeah. And also, I think another point is that, because I love how you're introducing all those amazing, self-development gurus to your own children, which I think, self-development is such an important concept. But when you look at our school curriculum, the concept of self is not there. We're talking about, the heart is missing, and, cultivating self-awareness, understanding self, self-development. I think those are some of the missing links. And I love how you are doing that. I think also, to a great extent, being a homeschooling dad also forces you to be a lifelong learner, so that you can introduce the latest, concepts, thought leaders in education in different fields to your own children, knowing more about art, all those science, all those different fields. So I think you are actually also learning with your own children. So I love that.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, it's not just to be clear, guys, this isn't something I just do with homeschoolers. So there's a program out there, an app called Nepri.
How to spell it? Spell it for us.
I'll put it in chat, but it's NEPRIS. And what they do is they say it's for STEM, but it's much larger than STEM. But they take professionals from industry and they live broadcast them into classrooms to have conversations with kids, to do evaluations, to help them with career planning, and to help them. So this is something that I try to do at a regular basis, is actually live broadcast into public school classrooms and talk with people. And what blows me away is I hear so many of those, those underperforming students where, well, I'm not good at math and I'm not good at this, but I love to build things. And it's like, well, there's nothing wrong with you as a student. You're just not a mathematician. You're a carpenter. and that's okay. That's not a bad thing. That's a wonderful thing. We need carpenters. We need auto mechanics. We need people that love to build things. We need, can you imagine somebody telling Tesla, oh no, we don't need people to build cars, right? Like Elon Musk, don't build cars. We don't need car builders. We need more engineers. No, come on. Guys, we need people that have all different kinds of passions and learning. And that's what I love to see the most in homeschooling is, if you had 40 homeschoolers together and asked them, well, what do you want to do? You would get such a wide variety of answers, as opposed to, well, I want to be a teacher or I want a job. That mentality of a job or academia being the only two options, I just want it to be bigger than that, I think. And I think that we can definitely equip them to do that.
Oh, I love this. And we're going to wrap up soon. Okay, everyone. Thank you. You guys have been with us for more than an hour. We have almost 30 people. So this is great. So I want to ask you, one thing I think another problem in our educational system is everybody is so afraid of failures and mistakes. But we all know we cannot grow without making mistakes. So how do you cultivate? I don't know how your children feel about failures and mistakes. So how do you kind of work with them to embrace mistakes and hardships in life?
Yeah. So if I don't know is our leading mantra, the next one is, what did you learn? And so for us, failure is failure when you didn't learn anything from it, right? So my son the other day, he was outside playing on the swing, and you saw that look like he wanted to jump off of it, but he wasn't sure whether it was a good idea or not. And then he jumped off it and he got hurt. And so immediately it was, well, what did you learn? Oh, I don't want to do that again. Excellent. This was not a failure. This was not something that shouldn't have happened.
Reframe it. Yeah.
You were able to learn something from this. And that is a huge issue that I have with the A to F system in schooling, the GPA, all of that nonsense. When you make it so that a failure is anything less than perfection, okay, great. I don't know anybody in the world that meets perfection ever. Day in, day out, we fail. It's human. What's
Amen.
more valuable is teaching people that every failure is something that I get from all the reading, all those self-help gurus. It doesn't matter where you get it from. There's not a single person you can point to that's had any measure of success in their life that hasn't found moving from failure to failure without losing momentum and learning and growing. That's how they got to the point of success where they're at. Usually the biggest success stories are the ones that have the largest failure stories preceding it, right? I lost everything and I learned the most valuable lesson ever.
Amen. And actually, I think when I think about my own personal life, actually every transformation in my life was a result of a crisis in my life. And so yeah, like now I'm just loving it, you know, making failures and mistakes, because I know after this I'm going to have my transformation. Otherwise, it will be a lot harder for the transformation to occur. Yeah. So really, we're wrapping up here. So I have a few quick questions for you, Dan.
Okay.
So what do you think is the purpose of learning or education?
Growth.
I love it.
So this is who you are now. And when you die, you're going to be a completely different person. And in between those is growth. So your learning, your education should be that constant step to move forward to the person you want to be. And however you define that, okay? So if you want to be a dancer, I am not going to tell you to go and study math in the other room. I'm going to tell you to go dance every day. And that here's that motivational speaker thing that I do. But whatever it is that you are passionate about and you love, go do that. Well, I can't afford to. I've got a job. I've got to do this. I got to do that. Yeah, there are a lot of excuses out there. There are. But ultimately, what you need to do is decide what's important, who you want to be, and start making that the priority.
Yeah. Oh, I love this. This is so true. So if you were a school principal, if you were given the option to design a school, what is your ideal vision for a school? Like, how does this ideal school look like for you? Yep. Or what is school for, kind of? Yeah.
Okay. If I had to design a school, which I probably wouldn't. I'd probably just encourage everybody to stay home. But if I were to design a school, it would be a single large building. There would be no walls. It would be one room.
Yeah, the hashtag.
It literally would be one room. And in that room, it would just be different resources and assets. There would be an area for art. There would be an area for dance. There would be computers for people to go learn there. There would be a place where speakers just come in throughout the day from all over the community and they share and interact with people. There would be a sign-up place for volunteers in the community where they could come and teach people things from their own life experiences. There would be, literally, it would be an open room just filled with assets that the kids could come and use as they wanted. And at the end of it all, it would be, okay, well, are there standard foundational things? Yes. Can they read? Can they do math? Can they do science? Yes, we'd have that. There would be a Khan Academy or some sort of grading system. But the grading system isn't there for the purpose of, well, you're an A student and you're an F student. It's more so, do you have foundational understanding so that you can do all of these other things that are here? Dance and art and cooking and sewing and conversation, languages and fashion design and whatever, music mixing, and I want to learn how to play the cello while I'm dancing, like whatever it is. I'd want the place to be a place of open learning where it's not necessarily directed, but it's supported. And what would teachers look like in that? The teachers would be there encouraging people through the failures. Those who are finding success in what they're doing are going to continue because success is propelling them forward. Those who are having failures, the teacher's place is to be there, encouraging them to move forward.
Amen. I love this. And also, based on what you just shared, I'm now just remembering an article I read. I think this one country in Europe, I don't remember which country, they are actually having a school just like the way you described, just like an open building, open room, no teachers, just like different resources and assets, and for children to play, to make meaning out of those things based on their interest and identity. And the school is really, really growing. They now have a waiting list of parents who wanted to send. I think more and more parents are waking up and trying to take control of their own children's educational journey. But thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there was a TED Talk on that as well, where they brought a computer.
Yes!
they brought a bunch. For those of you that don't know it, they brought a bunch of computers into a classroom in India, and they gave them a grade 12, so just before college, biochemistry question, and they put it on the board. And the kids were like, okay, well, there's a thing on the board, and the teacher gave them no instruction, no direction. There were just computers there for them to use. And within a month, these kids who had never done science, never done biology, nothing, they were doing grade 12 biochemistry simply with the computers being provided to them and a question put on the board.
Exactly. And that section is actually an economically undeveloped section in India. And also, I think they also have another kind of, they call it, I don't know if I remember this correctly, they call that person grandma. So this person is not a teacher, but hey guys, you guys are amazing. Keep going, figure it out. Just be a positive reinforcer, like, yeah, thumbs up. This person didn't really know much about the subject matter, but just to give our children a positive environment to figure things out on their own. Anyway, this has been such an incredible interview and our conversation. I'm loving this. I'm so thankful that we have so many people joining us right now, engaging in conversation. For some reason, I'm not really seeing everyone's comments on LinkedIn because I think I'm live on multiple places and there's a delay, but I'm going to catch up on comments later and share with us where can we learn more about you, Dan.
So you can go to my website, www.millennialmotivator.ca. Twitter is really where I spend a lot of time. I am on LinkedIn, so if you message me or add me, I will be on LinkedIn. But Twitter is really where I spend most of my time. So I'll drop that link somewhere. I make a point that if you tag me in a comment on Twitter, I will send you a video reply. I promise. So if you guys had questions that I didn't see in chat or you were on another platform and I wasn't able to answer and you'd like to hear an answer from me, tag me on Twitter. I will send you a video reply.
I love this. And I think you and I would love to collaborate with you and to organize an immersion program for parents. Just like, talk about a group of us, talking about the problem in education. How can we help our children be future ready? And you have like so much experience in this area. I would love to do something like that in the near future. But you are just amazing. Everyone really connect with him, and he does do lots of videos and responses. So thank you again, everyone. So this show is on every Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific time and noon Eastern Standard Time and 5 p.m. British time. And thank you for supporting this. And let's keep the conversation going. What is school for? Let's keep asking this question and try to answer this question. Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you again, Dan.